Most Americans can mostly sing the first verse of their national anthem, but did you know that it started out as a poem with 4 verses? On the birthday of the United States, let's take a look at the words that were first published without any music and which had the title Defense of Fort McHenry. Francis Scott Key was born in 1779 to a wealthy Maryland family. He got a first-rate education in Annapolis, and then he returned home to Frederick County to work as a lawyer. He and his wife Polly had a lot of kids. I found some conflicting genealogical records. Some said 10, some said 11, some said 12, but I'm pretty sure that he had 10 kids who reached adulthood, got married, and presumably had children of their own. If you're a Francis Scott Key descendant, let me know, because I bet there's a lot of you out there. Francis Scott Key led a full and interesting life, but of course he's best known as the author of what would later become the lyrics to the national anthem of the United States. It's funny to me that America's best-known song comes from one of its least-known wars. About 30 years after gaining its independence, the United States was still having to deal with Britain treating it like a colony. At this time, Old Blighty was having a bit of a spat with Napoleon Bonaparte, and even when British sailors managed to survive cannon fire, rum and the delights of shore leave often finished them off. In constant need of new sailors, the Brits had developed a nasty habit of kidnapping young American men and forcing them to sign up to sail for a king and country that they had kind of rejected. Bad form. The problem was exacerbated by the fact that Britain was all like,
I say, let's attack merchant ships so we can disrupt trade between those smelly Frenchies and those ungrateful Yanks.
So the US and Britain went to war. Again. The War of 1812 lasted just 2 years, and both sides got in some good punches. The Redcoats sacked Washington, D.C., invading the White House to eat a very nice dinner that the First Lady had prepared for a dinner party, and then set the place on fire. Very bad form indeed. However, the Americans did get to scrap with the Canadians a few times, and they showed the British once and for all that they weren't going to be bossed around by anyone, not even their mommy. A key battle of the War of 1812 was the Siege of Fort McHenry. The fort sits at the tip of a peninsula in the Patapsco River, and whoever held it would have had the ability to control a lot of roads and trade routes, as well as the city of Baltimore. Or Baltimore, if you're from Baltimore. Just before the battle, our buddy Francis was on his way to a British ship to negotiate for the release of an American doctor who had been taken prisoner when those naughty redcoats took over Washington, D.C. That might seem strange, just willingly walking up to an enemy camp to negotiate for the release of someone, but this was a different society. It was very bound by honor and tradition, and these kinds of negotiations happened all the time. And Francis must have been a pretty decent lawyer, because he was like, y'all need to release my buddy, Dr. Beans. And then the British were like, quite. But there was just one problem. The battle had started, so it wasn't safe to leave for 25 hours. The good news is that Francis Scott Key had a fantastic view of the fight, while he was waiting aboard an American ship that was stuck in the harbor waiting to see how things turned out. The Brits fired everything they had at Fort McHenry, but the next morning a giant US flag was flying over it, having been sewn by an absolute legend named Mary Young Pickersgill and hoisted by the fort's commander as an extra special way to tell the Brits that they had failed. And to this day, Americans will dig in their heels and refuse to do as they're told, and they still love really big flags. Since the bombardment of Fort McHenry didn't work, the Brits turned to their second favorite method of warfare, being passive-aggressive. Their navy sailed away from Baltimore, and the two haven't spoken since. Because this was Jane Austen times, Francis Scott Key needed to write some poetry to, process what he'd been through. Defense of Fort McHenry offered a vivid description of the battle. It was immediately popular and was printed both on handbills, the early 19th century equivalent of dropping a single, as well as in local newspapers. If you're Gen Z or younger, newspapers were words painted on tree bark, and it's how old people used to learn stuff. The song was quickly fitted to a tune called To Anacreon in Heaven, and the song was a total banger. 100 years later, it was still so popular that President Wilson declared that it should be played at government events. And then in 1931, an act of Congress made it our official national anthem. So although today we know it as a song, right now I'd like to share it with you as the poem that it originally was. Perhaps you're getting ready for a barbecue, or waiting for some fireworks to start, or you've just yelled at your kids for the 5th time not to hold sparklers so close to the dog. But I hope that in this moment, we can look back to where it all started, be grateful for the sacrifices and work of so many that came before us, and appreciate the wonderful lives we have in our shared nation today. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming? And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? On the shore dimly seen, through the mists of the deep, where the foe's haughty host in dread silence reposes, what is that which the breeze o'er the towering steep, as it fitfully blows, half conceals, half discloses? Now it catches the gleam of the morning's first beam, in full glory reflected, now shines on the stream. 'Tis the star-spangled banner. Oh, long may it wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. And where is that band who so vauntingly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country, should leave us no more? Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps' pollution. No refuge could save the hiring and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled banner in triumph doth wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Oh, thus be it ever when freemen shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, when our cause it is just, and this be our motto: in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.